I remember the second video I posted revolving around the Kingdom Hearts series was a video called Xigbar Will Betray Master Xehanort, in which at the time I gave a bare bones theory about why he would go on to be a leading antagonist after the conclusion of the Xehanort saga. And as time went on, I reiterated this when more showings of the Master of Masters came in the form of Kingdom Hearts Key back cover. I turned from a simple betrayal to the most powerful character in the Kingdom Hearts universe playing a role in current events. Shortly put, Xigbar was the Master of Masters. Over the 4 years, I faced scrutiny for this belief, and despite the fact I wound up technically being wrong in the part of who I thought it was going to be, the stuff I actually faced scrutiny for wound up being everything that made it so. As Nomura stated himself, the decision to make Xigbar Luxu came from an intrigue he had since Kingdom Hearts 2 with the character. In other words, he didn't want to kill him off without making him a big bad at least once. So with Nomura confirming that my thoughts were right over the years, I wanted to take a look back at all these things that made Xigbar my target of interest for a potential future beyond the machinations of Master Xehanort.
New backdrop!
In Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, in the Keyblade Graveyard, Xigbar emerges to a frozen Ventus and distracted Aqua, trying to goad them into a battle. After some bantering, Ventus gets pissed and tells him to shut up, prompting Xigbar to say, "So this kid thinks he's a full-fledged Keyblade wielder." Back in 2010, this line had taken me for a loop, as to our knowledge at this point, Xigbar had only ever seen two wielders. Terra, who he thought was too weak to be a Keyblade master, another thing that threw me for a loop, and Xehanort, who he was on good terms with. But let's face it, Master Xehanort was an old man. He was far past his prime, and thus this would be the start of my fascination with Xigbar. So imagine my surprise when Xigbar appeared in Dream Drop Distance with an even bigger role to play, assisting in the experiment that turned Terra Xehanort into Ansem and Xemnas, then to later reveal that he knows the layers and intricacies of Xehanort's plan, his unwavering focus as he reveals he was already half Xehanort. He also took a leading role within the game as well, as though he was Xehanort's right-hand man. And knowing that within Birth by Sleep he was promised Xehanort's Keyblade through the right of succession, I started to sense a lust for the Keyblade, something made apparent with all of his bantering towards many wielders we've seen him interact with already. It was clear Xigbar knew more than he had let on throughout how much of the series we had seen him in so far.
Better run!
Yeah!
In Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, there's a special cutscene in which Xigbar and XIII discuss the alignments of the organization's leader Xemnas, in which the machinations of Xigbar can first be felt. This is made worse here by the fact Xigbar was always one of Xemnas' personal guards, outranking even Saïx in terms of leadership after Lord Xemnas himself. He asks XIII a couple questions about whether or not Xemnas is who he say he is, how that affects XIII, and what it may mean for them all. Definitely an odd move for someone like Xigbar. Also included in Kingdom Hearts 2.5 was a new cutscene for Kingdom Hearts Recoded, and this is where my radar apparently picked up something everyone else brushed off at the time. The expression Xigbar makes as young Xehanort utters the words, "Of all the Keyblades in existence, Master Xehanort's is the most ancient." When I got into discussions over this scene, people chalked it up to his interest in Xehanort's power, but I argued strongly it was in fact an expression of dismay as to why young Xehanort knows such a fact or perceives such a thing to be true. We know today it is true, and we know the Book of Prophecies plays a part in this belief for Master Xehanort, as he knows what's within it. So these 4 points led me to 4 realizations about Xigbar. 1. He had disdain towards Keyblade wielders. 2. He knows almost as much, if not more, than Master Xehanort, as he was able to complete the experiment on Ansem with no guidance from Terra Xehanort. 3. His loyalties may have never been fully in Xemnas, thus subsequently Xehanort as well. 4. He knew about the ancient past and would play some role in the future of some sort outside of Xehanort's machinations. Another thing to note is his abilities. Why was his abilities so OP for him to simply be a subordinate of the organization? Remember, other characters had abilities like control over a certain element or a certain strength boost, or maybe they had certain little magical like elements like Luxu and his cards. In KH2, he had reality warping and space distortion, an ability obtained by Xemnas later in the game when he merges with the Kingdom Hearts of People's Hearts. But he just had this ability outright, and it wasn't some weapon generated ability either. These were simply the abilities he were granted or that he gained through birth. But to say Xigbar was so powerful, we must understand this power is present when he's a somebody as well to no lesser degree in Birth by Sleep. Whereas all his peers seemed to pretty much gain more strength when they became nobodies. They seemed pretty average as somebodies, but when they became nobodies, they wound up gaining some type of power boost, potentially due to their connection to Xemnas. However, Xigbar we see within Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, or Braig we see within Birth by Sleep. Of course, his abilities are still just as strong and prominent as ever. Xigbar had reality warping, and in Days opening, it said he traverses realms as well. The extent of his powers were unnatural for the rest of his peers within the organization. And this just got worse as time went on. No characters had scaled to this level of power except maybe Xemnas, so where did it come from? Then X back cover was released, and this is where things really started to get serious for me. As we could see, I said cut open a rift in space akin to a wormhole, and then I knew what age he originated from, and that's why I became hellbent on the fact that Xigbar would be none other than the Master of Masters. So, with all of these things I had going towards this theory that Xigbar would be the Master of Masters, it's funny how much I actually wound up calling, even though just to get who I thought he would be wrong. It's cool to actually see that, Nomura also had this same intrigue with this character, because the intrigue for me really just came from these 4 points that I just gave you guys. It was more so something of, ooh, damn, this guy could probably potentially be a pretty badass villain if he ever got the chance. And although I was more so thinking it was going to be along the lines of a betrayal, or he was going to do something that would make Master Xehanort's obtaining the X-Blade not, as fruitful as he wanted it to be, which was going to be to recreate the whole world, maybe something to where he would probably get the X-Blade, but it wouldn't be as powerful as it would be had Xigbar not done X, Y, and Z. It wound up being something a lot bigger than that. It wound up being him actually bringing or ushering in a new age by bringing the fairy tale ages foretellers. I had to think about how to get through that sentence. By getting the fairy tale ages foretellers to come into the present, so that way the Master of Masters' true and final plans could start to unravel. I would have never thought that his role would have been that big, but of course, I always had my eyes set on Luxu as well and things that Luxu would do, and I kind of did think that that's something that Luxu would do. So it's kind of funny how, even though I thought about Xigbar as a completely separate character, I still wound up calling so much about him. And I mean, it's not to brag about it, but damn, the theory really became a fucking reality.